Well, the Indian education system today is a fairly large education system. It is today one of the world's largest education system. If we look at it from the point of view of the number of higher education institutions that are there at this point of time, the number of universities, whether these are central, state, or deemed or private universities, or they are autonomous institutions like the PGDM institutions or the engineering institutions, etc., that are there. So, if we look at the total number of institutions of higher learning, today we are one of the largest sector in the world itself. Also, if you look at it from the point of view of the number of students who are enrolled in higher education system, we would find that this is one system that is again one of the world's largest, because the total number of students who are today coming in the system are far more than what is there in the US systems, or for that matter in Europe, and to some extent in Asia itself, in some of the other countries of Asia. So we are today one of the largest education system, but unfortunately we are the poorest in terms of the quality. I think we are very, very low in terms of the quality and global competitiveness. And I think there is a lot that can be done in that kind of a space. Well, among some of the radical measures that I think that are required to enhance skills is to change the very education model. Today there is so much of rigidity in the education model that everything has got to be taught in the class. So there are a certain number of credits to be completed in the class. There are a certain number of courses to be taught, and therefore the faculty time gets completely devoted onto that part of it. We haven't really we do not have the time in the current education system whereby the students can go to the industry and also learn on the job itself. I think the new model must take that into consideration, in which the industry or learning on the job, learning on the factory, learning in the factory, learning in the market must become the part of the learning process itself. So when we are able to do that, you automatically develop the skills. You cannot develop the skills only in the classrooms. The second very big thing is to look at it from the point of view of bringing the industry in the institution itself. For example, we can look at it from the point of view of the firms coming in to set up the labs itself in some of the engineering colleges. Take an example like Bosch has recently set up a center of excellence at LMIMS University in the area of industrial automation. Now this gives to the engineering students a hands-on experience of working on whether it is in robots, in the robotics, or in the area of mechatronics, or in the area of hydraulics itself. So they get to learn straight what the industry is really using it. Now when that happens, the skills get automatically developed. So one, we've got to change the entire model. We've got to spend more time, if not let's say more than the classroom, then at least equal to what we are spending in the classroom in the on-the-job learning. And second is bringing the industry into the institution. Second big kind of a change that is required is to ensure that the faculty spends the summertime in the industry, so that the faculty also gets an exposure to the industry itself. That's the time when the skills gaps can get reduced, and this, because the faculty knows now what exactly is the industry really looking at. When that happens, you are in a position to really create a better employable graduate. I think so, to a very large extent. I think today, if there are, if today India has made a big name in the IT sector, take an example, it is because the number of private engineering colleges in India far exceeds that of what the government engineering colleges are. If today India makes one of the best automobile on the road, then I think it is because of the fact that we have more number of private engineering colleges. At the same time, if you look at it from the perspective of the managerial manpower, the number of managerial people that are graduating or the graduates coming out from the private schools, they far exceed that comes out from the IIMs. So consequently, if you look at it, whether it is engineering, it is management, or it is medical, for example, or even in computer education, etc., or in architecture, if we have today more talent in the marketplace, which is working, not just in India but outside the country also, then I think to a very large extent, it's a private sector that must get the credit for that. So the private sector has definitely enhanced the access to higher education. Secondly, the private sector institutions are not just merely in the metro cities. They are there today in tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Now to that extent, there is an opportunity for students in these cities also to get the professional education and vocational education. And so from an access point of view, I think access has already got expanded to a very large extent. But whether the quality of Indian education, I think to a very large extent the private sector is responsible for also creating competition for the government institutions. So today, if IIMs are on their toes, I think to a very large extent, the leading private sector institutions can take credit for that. If IITs today start thinking in terms of innovations, if NITs start thinking in terms of the innovation, then I think to a very large extent, it is the private sector institutions that need to be getting credit for that, because they have been innovating. Quality, because these institutions are market driven, because they are not dependent on the government grants, they invariably look back in terms of the quality of the education itself. So if I look at it today, the top end of the private sector is, from a quality point of view, is as strong in terms of quality, if not more, than the government run top institutions. Yes, there are valleys, very large valleys in quality in Indian education. I say quality valleys in Indian education, but this is the same in the context of the government institutions. For example, state universities. State universities are today one of the classical examples of the poor quality. They have contributed today to the poorest quality of the graduate that we see in the marketplace. And the same thing could happen even in the private sector. So these are the quality values that exist, and which is what I said, as I said, though our Indian education system is very large and it is today world's largest, but from the point of view of the quality, it is one of the poorest. In the first place, the Indian education institutions are controlled. They are not regulated. They are controlled. The so-called regulatory agency is nothing but an inspection agency. Whether it is the UGC or AICTE, or it is the statutory councils under which the various programs would lie. Many of them, they just come in, inspect, and then they give their own kind of reports. It's an inspector Raj. You do not grow with such a kind of a system. Regulation is very different. I think if the regulatory system has got to be evolving, then in that case it has got to be more institutional friendly. It has to encourage autonomy. It has to encourage innovations. It has to encourage integration of the institution with the market forces itself, which today's system does not really allow. So I think there is a need today for an independent regulatory body whose job should not be to control the institutions, but it should be to look at the excesses that may be committed, any exploitative practices that may be there in the sector itself. Its job should be to forecast the manpower requirement. Its job should be to do a whole lot of a research in terms of what are the kind of new technologies which are today coming forth in terms of delivering the education. So the regulatory system, unfortunately, the way we have today does not really fulfill that. So we definitely need a new regulator in place, but it cannot be only one regulator. We will continue to have multiple regulators because the country is so very large. But at the same point of time, I think, as I said, innovation, autonomy, and equity and access must be there at the back of the mind when a regulatory framework is created. That's where I come up from. And institutions must be part of that regulatory framework. That is, in other words, if a regulator has got to be constituted, institutions must be there in it. Institution, if you have to create a regulatory framework and you don't involve the stakeholder, then in that case you do it, you create an alien system which will not again deliver you the result.